There's a fish called the stickleback that swims in rivers not too far from here that scientists love to study because of their unique behavior. They swim in schools, sometimes up to 1,000 fish. But no matter how large the school gets, the stickleback consistently pays attention to its surroundings and each other. So if one of the fish, let's call him Oscar, sees, hears, thinks, or feels that there's a threat nearby, it'll break away from the school with a few other fish to assess the risk. If there is no danger, they'll return to the school and do like Dory and just keep swimming. But if they do find a genuine threat, Oscar will stay back to distract the predator, while the rest of the fish return to the school and tell him to swim in the other direction. How the stickleback pays attention is what keeps it safe. We all have extraordinary senses, and they aid our survival. When we enter this world, we rely on caretakers to see, hear, think, and feel for us. So they know exactly when we're hungry, when we're sick, when we're hurting, and when we're in need of comfort. But as we get older, and our caretakers see that we can pay attention for ourselves, they redirect their attention on their own personal needs. But what the stickleback fish teaches us, that if we don't consistently pay attention to our surroundings and the behavior of others, we risk the safety of the entire school. Over the past 15 years, I've worked in over 1,300 schools throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe. I'm not a teacher, though. I'm a filmmaker. I began working in schools a few years after college, shortly after the Columbine High School shooting. I felt no one was asking the students why a tragedy like this could happen. So I grabbed a video camera and I began interviewing students all over the state of California. And everywhere I went, the students kept saying, "No one listens to me." So I gave 5 different teenagers each a video camera, and I asked them to film their thoughts and feelings for a year. They sent me over 80 hours of raw footage, and I turned it into 4 educational films that I began showing in schools. And everywhere I went, the students continued to say, "No one listens to me." After 10 years of speaking to nearly 1 million youth, I realized 2 things. One, I had the definition of listen all wrong. And 2, we are not teaching this critical skill to our children. Most of us are raised to believe that listening means hearing. But the root of the word is hallucinant, which simply means pay attention to. It's not just hearing, it's seeing, it's thinking, it's feeling too. Our schools teach reading because it's the primary way we learn. And our standard curriculum spends roughly 6 years on reading education and hardly any time on listening skills. And yet parents and educators continue to say to students, "You need to listen," or "Why are you not listening?" When I realized that we're not teaching this critical skill that students are asking us to do, I wrote and directed a feature film called Listen. And I began showing it in schools. I wanted to inspire others to redefine what listening means and train students, educators, and parents to change how they paid attention. A carefully crafted film can be a catalyst for a powerful listening experience. When the entire audience sees, hears, thinks, and feels a character struggle, they gain a new understanding of themselves and others. And after each screening, I'd facilitate a discussion so the entire audience could share their story and practice group listening. An intimate experience like that helps me have a collective understanding of the well-being and the adversity of the entire community. It also changes how people feel, and it inspires positive behavior. For example, In a school district outside of Spokane, 89% of the students, after the experience, said they were less likely to hurt themselves or others. 94% said they felt less alone. And 100% said that if they could become an active listener, they feel that they could help more students. 94% of the parents that participated in the experience were inspired to change how they communicated with their students. And 100% said more active listeners on campus would make their schools safer. After an experience in California, a student walked directly from the gymnasium to the principal's office. And he told the secretary, "I want you to call my parents because I want us all to sit down with the principal." When they arrived, they entered the principal's office. He proceeded to tell them that he was planning to take his life over the weekend. But the experience changed his mind and inspired him to seek help. Pediatrician Claudia M. Gold once stated, "Behind every behavioral problem is a story that gives meaning to the behavior." In the first 6 minutes of my film, you meet 5 teenagers, and you watch as they interact with other characters that don't listen to them. Throughout the rest of the film, their behavior is inspired by not being seen, heard, understood, and feeling alone. The film was inspired by what I saw in schools that didn't listen to the youth. And current national data is reflecting this harmful impact. Loneliness is now more prevalent in youth than any other age group. Suicide is currently the second leading cause of death in 10 to 18-year-olds. And school shootings have reached a 20-year high. The threats to our school are real, and it's time that we learn to pay attention like the stickleback. And learning to pay attention begins with Oscar. Each letter in Oscar's name stands for a key element of active listening. O is for openness. We have to practice listening with empathy and without judgment so we can feel what a person's saying. Try not to think about how you're going to respond or how you disagree, and just be open to what is being said. S is for silence. We have to practice being silent so we can hear what the person is saying. When we interrupt to give our opinion, we destroy the connection. C is for curiosity. We have to practice asking curious questions that inspire storytelling. Curiosity strengthens connections because it lets the person know that you care. A is for awareness. We have to practice being aware of how the behavior or the body language don't match the words being said. And R is for respect. We have to practice respect so the person feels comfortable sharing again. When I was 14 years old, I took a shotgun and I took it apart and I put it in my football duffel bag with a box of shells. My brother entered the room as I was zipping up the bag. He looked at me and he could tell I was troubled and he asked me what was wrong. I said nothing. But my brother was aware of how my body language wasn't matching my words because I was staring directly at the bag. He walked over, unzipped the bag, and he saw what was inside. And he curiously asked me what had happened that made me put the gun in the bag. I told him that I was threatened and I was extremely scared. He listened silently and with respect, and then he told me that he needed to tell my parents. I don't think I'd be here today if my brother hadn't listened to me. 8 years after my brother prevented me from bringing that gun to school, he was killed in a tragic accident. And that destroyed me. And then 8 months later, the Columbine High School shooting happened. And I began listening to students share their pain. And their vulnerability inspired me to share mine. And I began to heal. When I started listening to the youth, the U.S. Secret Service did a comprehensive study of 37 school shootings to determine what is the profile of a school shooter and how can we develop prevention methods. Their answer? To listen to the children. But today, nearly 2 decades later, our schools are still not paying attention to this vital connection. But let me show you. I worked with 30 school principals of one of the largest districts in the country, and I asked them, can you tell me the top 3 critical issues that you all share despite your school's differences? This is what they listed in order of priority: loneliness, mental health, safety, and security. When I saw it on the screen, just as you see right now, I immediately saw the connection. If you have a student on campus who feels lonely, you have a mental health issue. And if you have a mental health issue on campus, you now have a safety and security concern. I asked the principals, where do we spend our time, money, and resources? And they all said, number 3, safety and security. But how are we going to address loneliness and mental health if we don't start listening to the children? I have 2 children. They're both in school. My youngest made these beautiful slides for me today. This issue is personal to me. We must prioritize listening skills as much as reading. And everyone in the community needs to learn to pay attention like the stickleback. When we do, we will reduce loneliness, we will improve mental health, and we will make our schools safer. Thank you.